Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 224 based on novel. So let's start. The silver needles that came out from Mutuluo's wounds returned back into the embroidered shoes and vanished without a trace. It was impossible to see where these silver needles were hiding at. That pair of embroidered shoes then came loose from that pair of severed legs, and flew back into Granny Sai's basket. Granny Sai took out some strong cloth soles, and cloths to quickly make herself another pair of new embroidered shoes. She wore them on her feet, and she shook her head. "You dirted my shoes and still have the face to whine so loudly. The devil race sure is an unreasonable bunch. You don't want your legs right. The skin on your calves are still in a good condition. I can make another pair of boots. The markings on it are natural decoration. Can you give them to me? You are so nice." Devil God Mutuluo gave a piercing roar from the pain, and his hands trembled as he tried to seal the wounds on his severed leg. He prevented himself from bleeding, and when he heard this, fury boiled up in his chest. Woman with a heart as malicious as snakes and scorpions. You are. He puked out a mouthful of blood. Fu Riluo frowned, and his face spread into a smile. Hanging above lust is a deadly blade. It's Mutuluo's own fault for being chopped. Jahwali, go down with the rest of them and leave as far as you can. Since we have already signed the Pact of Earth Count, I will need to have a good discussion with Heavenly Teacher now. Saint Woodcutter said with a smile, "Qin Mu, you should go down too. This is not a place you can stay in." Everyone was astonished. They knew after they signed the Pact of Earth Count, they would have no more burden, so they would definitely challenge each other. Qin Mu, Jahwali, Chi Jui and the rest walked down the sacrificial altar. Jahwali said calmly, "The previous time, I got defeated by Brother Qin and Brother Chi together. I cannot accept it, so I would like to challenge both of you again." "Not a problem, not a problem." Qin Mu walked down the altar with quick steps and he said with a smile, "Defeating you the previous time was purely by luck. I won't be so lucky this time." Chi Jui's gaze wavered and he said, "Brother Qin is cunning and have good tactics. I saw you are very familiar with Earth Count, talking about some seal. Would you mind telling me in detail?" Qin Mu couldn't help grabbing the jade pendant in front of his chest, and he quietly put his hand down again. He laughed and said, "What seal? I didn't say anything about it." Chi Jui sneered. The three of them walked down the sacrificial altar, and they took their strides at the same time. They also walked down the stairs at the same time, afraid to show their backs to the others. Qin Mu felt troublesome, and his expression flickered. These two have learned from their mistakes, so it will be slightly difficult to stab them both in their backs. Both of them have been tricked by me before, so they learn fast. The Black Tiger God took a glance at his expression and he snorted. "Junior brother, your expression has changed again. Be careful not to let it affect your Dao heart. My lord and Fu Riluo is going to duel, and this is not a place we can stay in. Let us go." "Mutuluo, Yuluo Sha, are you guys following or not?" Huge beads of cold sweat rolled down his forehead, and he stood up with difficulty. He said coldly, "Woman with a malicious heart like snakes and scorpions who spoiled my feet. If I don't take revenge, how will have the face to meet my people?" Qin Mu couldn't resist saying, "This senior, my medical expertise is remarkable. If senior doesn't mind, I can help you reattach your legs." What so-called a healer treats his parents like their own parents would. I don't want to see anyone being injured. You can see whose leg you find suitable here. You can chop them off and I will help you attach it. I guarantee you will be up and jumping. Other people's expression changed tremendously, and they all took a step back to prevent Mutuluo from chopping their legs off. Mutuluo endured the pan and he chuckled. "Little brat, do you think I will believe you? Even if I chop their legs to let you attack, you will still poison me. Qin Mu scratched his head. Healer treats their patients like their parents would. Bah. Shut up. Qin Mu sighed and his expression was bleak. You don't know I'm truly kind in my heart. I know you are good-hearted and isn't willing to chop off the legs of your own people, but Qi Jui isn't your clansman, you can chop off his legs. Brother Qi, I'm not targeting you, just giving an example. Qi Jui's expression changed tremendously and his legs tightened. He said calmly, Brother Qin, don't explain, I understand. The Black Tiger God and Granny Sai took the first step to walk into the distance. Qin Mu hurriedly followed up and Mutuluo took a glance at Qi Jui's legs. Qi Jui's legs tightened again and he said calmly, I'm from the upper bound, Mutuluo, you can't offend me. Furthermore, if he's skilled in medicine, he's skilled in poison as well. If you believe him, you will definitely die. Mutuluo controlled the devil clouds to follow after Yu Luosha. He sneered and said, that snake lady, respectable king and heavenly teacher, has a fight, and so do we, you can forget about leaving. Granny Sai turned around to give a radiant smile, and Mutuluo was instantly infatuated. He chuckled and said, no matter how beautiful you are, it's useless. I will definitely seize you and make you be willing to be my wife. Beside him, Yu Luosha was angered and suppressed her voice, Mutuluo, you are feeling benevolence in your heart. You don't bear to kill her, but she won't hesitate to kill you. Mutuluo shook his head. She won't kill me. When she smiled at me just now, I can see a hint of admiration in her smile. Yu Luosha said coldly, your Dao heart has already been destroyed by this demoness, wake up. You shall deal with that black tiger, and I will kill her. Mutuluo hesitated for a moment and he could only nod. He also felt there was something wrong with his state. He knew he had lost his legs by the trickery of this woman, but he couldn't bring himself to hate her. Not only could he not hate her, every frown and every smile from her tugged at his heart and influenced his judgment. It was like she was living in his heart, making him sink into deep love. This kind of situation was very dangerous. Maybe letting Yu Luosha dealing with her would be the best choice. Yu Luosha, don't kill her. Mutuluo said seriously, you also know my heart is rarely moved and once it is, my love will never die. You can defeat her but keep her alive. Yu Luosha gritted her teeth and she snorted. Qin Mu blinked his eyes and he thought to himself. Could this be a heart devil planted in his Dao heart from great educational heavenly devil scriptures? When did Granny plant the heart devil in Mutuluo's Dao heart? They sprinted 1,000 miles and the black tiger god suddenly stopped. He looked around and saw a sigh of doomsday around here. There were earth, water, wind and fire pouring continuously and in the distance, there was even a huge meteor that had landed over there. It was round, black and it interfered with the Earth magnetic field, distorting up and down. Right here then. The black tiger god laughed. Dao friends of the devil race, I feel this place is very good. No matter if it is to bury your corpses, or to bury our corpses, that's a good feng shui land. Junior brother, go over to that black ball over there so that you guys don't get affected. Yu Luosha and Mutuluo walked forward. Yu Luosha sneered and said, this land has buried too many devils, only your corpses will be buried here. Granny Sai instructed Qin Mu and said, your third eye is still uncovered, cover it quickly with the golden willow leaf, don't use it recklessly. She gave some thoughts and instructed again. If you really can't win them, just take it down, it should be fine to use it. Qin Mu said with a smile, I'm just going over to chat with these few senior brothers, there won't be any danger. Granny Sai was still not at ease and she said, it's fine if it's Zhehuali, be careful of Qi Jui, his technique is very powerful, but it takes quite a while to execute it. This person is harboring unfathomable intentions, and he has been staring at your chest. You can take the chance, when he isn't ready to attack him first. It will then be easier to deal with other people. Qin Mu nodded his head solemnly and waved his hand, walking towards the meteor. THG walked side by side with him and he said indifferently, "Brother Qin, I've heard everything, you want to attack me by surprise, not that easy." Qin Mu said righteously, "What is Brother Qin talking about? I have been learning ever since I was young and I'm familiar with the words of the saint. Why would I attack you by surprise? We are merely going to talk about the wind, flower, snow and moon, nothing about the battle." Jawali carried his demon knife and walked to his left side. Every step seemed to be measured perfectly and he said calmly, "The previous time, both of you have worked together to defeat me. I don't really accept that defeat. We rarely gather together, so we naturally have to test each other." Qin Mu said with a smile, "How can we keep fighting? Senior brothers over there, come along with us. Once the gods start fighting, we will be the ones to suffer." There were still 2 devil divine arts practitioners behind and they walked forward when they heard him. Everyone started to walk towards that meteor that was half hidden in the ground. These 2 devil divine arts practitioners came close and only realized something was wrong. Qin Mu, Jawali and THG were crossing their chi activity, dragging the both of them in. Qin Mu, Jawali, THG. The body movements and footwork of the 3 of them changed continuously, and their aura was changing continuously. Every movement of their body contained hidden profound theory, and the method of attack was hidden in their walk, which also involves the transformation of divine art, and the transformation of chi activity. Even though the murderous intent couldn't be seen, the murderous intent was hidden inside. These 5 people walked forward. Qin Mu, Jawali and THG had stable footsteps, and they weren't messed up at all. Meanwhile, the footsteps of the other 2 devil divine arts practitioners behind them gradually turned messy, as they stumbled left and right like drunk men. After walking 3 to 5 miles, the 2 devil divine arts practitioners have already exhausted everything they had and their faces were flushed. After 3 to 5 miles more, the 2 devil divine arts practitioners suddenly coughed up huge mouthful of blood and they stumbled as they ran. They followed behind the 3 of them. Another 3 to 5 miles later, those 2 devil divine arts practitioners have basically coughed up all the blood in their body and suddenly, the primordial spirit of one of them ignited and he turned into a man of fire. He took his last breath and his corpse collapsed onto the ground. In an instant, he turned into a pile of human-shaped charcoal. Dozens of yards more, the legs of the other devil divine arts practitioner broke, and he collapsed onto the ground. His head then exploded with a pop, and his primordial spirit split apart. Qin Mu raised his eyebrows, and he gave a slight smile. "Now, without them bothering us, we can slowly talk." Cold beads of sweat rolled off Jawali and THG's foreheads, while the corner of their eyes twitched. As they crossed their chi, all of them couldn't just stop halfway. THG and Jawali weren't working together, and they were fighting each other too. Thus Qin Mu was able to drag that 2 devil divine arts practitioners to death. If they had worked together to deal with Qin Mu wouldn't have succeeded. Yet they could never have worked together. THG sneered and said, "Brother Qin said that we are talking, so why did you still have to lay a trap and drag those 2 devil senior brothers to death? However, our horizons are similar, so if you want to drag us to death, you will have to walk 1 to 2 years." The 3 of them walked to the side of the meteor, and the magnetic field here changed. The 3 of them raised their feet and landed on this ball. They could walk effortlessly on it like they were walking on a flat surface. On the huge round ball, Lufu heaven seemed to become a wall that was raised straight up. Of course, this wall was immeasurable in terms of length, width and thickness. Such a strange sight was beyond imagination. Qin Mu raised his head to look at Lufu heaven. The pyramid-shaped sacrificial altars were erected on a place far away, and through the thin layer of fog, they could faintly see that sacrificial altar where Saint Woodcutter, and Fu Riluo were at. Fu Riluo's heaven and earth were like an erected painting. There were many places that were black and white, having no other colors. When the volcanoes erupted, they were like fireworks during festive occasions, lighting up this painting of mountains and rivers so it was not too monotonous. They could still see the shattered pieces of the stars falling from the sky. Next, fire snakes began to hang down from the sky, and even though the speed looks very slow, it was actually scarily fast. The sacrificial altar that Saint Woodcutter and Fu Riluo were at was 1,000 miles away, and even if they saw it, it was just a tiny speck. Even though he could see that bright light and fog coming over there and the sacrificial altar looked small, the light was very intense, like a small sun that had suddenly risen. Its light was much stronger than the light of sun, and he could feel the piercing light all the way here. Meanwhile, the battle over at the Black Tiger God and Granny Sai was pretty magnificent. Every action from the four gods could be seen very clearly. Qin Mu stopped in his footstep. Zhehuali and Qi Jiu stopped at the same time, and the three youths stood on this huge meteor, and they looked around. The sky here was tall and the fog was faint. This made them felt carefree and relaxed. It was a rare place. Suddenly, a huge planet shifted over this side, and that planet looked to be very huge. It seemed like it could fall off anytime. Wherever they passed by, the sky warped and the ground broke up continuously. Thousands of mountains and chasms appeared rapidly, and the sight was extremely terrifying. In the distance, the Black Tiger God, Granny Sai, Mu Tuluo, and Yuluo Sho suddenly moved through the land that had risen up and began to fight each other fiercely. Does Zhehuali know why Luofu heaven had turned into such a state? Qin Mu asked curiously. Zhehuali hesitated and said, as for the specific cause, I had once heard Master Fu Riluo mentioned about it before. Master Fu Riluo said abnormal stars had suddenly appeared and stopped in the sky above Luofu heaven, warping the space and creating a natural disaster. Ever since that day, Luofu heaven was no longer fit for living. The abnormal stars, he said, were those broken planets in the sky. They looked abnormally huge from their angle, and they could even see the mountains on the planets clearly. Even though my master and I are from different races, I can feel his heart of a newborn that was homesick. He said solemnly, I've heard Master Fu Riluo said that he wasn't the respectable king of the devil race originally. Back then, the respectable king had brought numerous devil gods to try and destroy the abnormal stars, or to push them away from Luofu heaven. However, there were many terrifying existences on the abnormal stars. After the respectable king and the devil gods went to the abnormal stars, they never came back. Master Fu Riluo said, after he went to the abnormal star, he discovered that they had all died in battle. Qin Mu was puzzled and said, so why didn't Fu Riluo try to destroy these abnormal stars and instead spend 20,000 years to attack Supreme Emperor Heaven, causing so many devils and humans to die as a result? Zhehuali shook his head and said, it's an important matter that must be kept secret, so he didn't speak in detail. Qin Mu looked at Qi Jiu and he inquired. Brother Qi, is a guest from the celestial heavens, do you know anything about these abnormal stars? Qi Jiu was about to say something when that huge planet had already come to the sky above their head. The three of them instantly felt their body becoming lighter, and they cussed in their hearts. Qin Mu hurriedly executed his sword pellet, and the sword light was thick as a pillar. He stabbed down on the meteor under their feet, and he tried to stabilize his footing. At the same time, Zhehuali's demon knife also stabbed towards the meteor, and the shoes on Qi Jiu's feet split apart, as they transformed into bird claws to grab at the meteor. He tried to dig into the meteor, so he doesn't get sucked away by the magnetic field of the abnormal planet. Next, cold sweat broke out on their heads. Qin Mu's sword light from the sword pellet was bounced back from the meteor. Zhehuali's demon knife also couldn't stab into the meteor. Even though Qi Jui's bird claws were very powerful, the star was simply too hard and nearly broke his claws. Whoosh! The magnetic force formed sparks and hurricane like the aurora above the ice plains in the north of eternal peace. With a gentle sweep, the three of them flew up into mid-air involuntarily. The three youths weren't flustered in the face of danger, and they executed their own techniques, and tried to escape out of this hurricane formed from this magnetic lightning. Qin Mu transformed into the form of Mars' sovereign, that had a bull head and human body. As he stepped on the two fire dragons, the twin dragons brought him to rush out. Zhehwali raised his knife and tens of thousands of knife light flickered, trying to break through the hurricane. On the other side, Qi Jui's body transformed into a 9-headed phoenix, which flapped his wings to fly. His speed was extremely fast and even above Qin Mu and Zhehwali. However, even though they were the top-notch experts of the younger generation, they also couldn't break free from this magnetic hurricane. They got brought into the sky by the hurricane and flew higher and higher. Brother Tiger's great idea, make us come to this meteor. We are too high up, and we got caught by the magnetic force of the abnormal star. Cold sweat broke out on Qin Mu's forehead, and he suddenly took a long breath, sweeping up all the air in the surroundings to contain them in his chest. Since he couldn't escape from the magnetic hurricane, he could only wait and see if this hurricane would weaken. There was no air in outer space, so he had to keep a mouthful of breath in his chest first. Luckily, his abilities weren't weak, so he could store even more air in his chest. This mouthful of air in his chest could ensure that he didn't need to breathe for a day. Even if he got sent to outer space, he could still protect his life. Qi Jui and Zhehwali were also taking in breaths, and the two of them were also smarter than average. They quickly thought of the crux like how Qin Mu did. The magnetic hurricane swept them higher and higher while the meteor and Lufu heaven below went further and further away. Cold sweat rolled out Qin Mu's forehead, and that was because there were numerous lightning swimming above their heads. Catcher! A bolt of heavenly lightning suddenly moved and struck towards him. Instantly, it was like a prodded hornet's nest as countless bolts of lightning suddenly appeared and formed a sea of heavenly lightning. Qin Mu threw away the sword pellet, and flying swords danced around his body. Suddenly, they transformed into a 3 yards metal ball to cover Qin Mu inside, blocking out the lightning. Bolts of lightning bombarded on the sword pellet, and the sword pellet gave off creaking sounds, as it got scorched red hot that it could melt any time. On the other side, Qi Jui and Zhehwali weren't having it good as well. The heavenly lightning rolled and drowned out all 3 of them. After a moment, the lightning scattered and Qin Mu hurriedly kept his sword pellet. He saw that the magnetic hurricane was still around, and it was still sweeping them like a long snake slithering. There were magnificent rays of light that spread wide, and they could change into numerous kinds of colors every instant. Yet when Qin Mu raised his head, his heart sank. They had already left far away from Lufu heaven, and entered the sky of the abnormal star. Crap! Qin Mu felt his scalp crawling. He suddenly saw the green and lush mountains on the abnormal star, and he felt slightly at ease. Since there was greenery here, this meant that there should be air here. He just didn't know if the air was suitable for humans to breathe in. Whoosh! They got thrown out of the magnetic hurricane, and the 3 of them tumbled out. They flew quite a distance before finally stabilizing in the air. Themselves. The 3 youths stood in the sky and looked at one another in dismay. Qi Jui's 9 heads swayed and they gradually shrunk back into his chest, leaving only 1 head which transformed back into a human shape. How can we get back to Luofu heaven? The 3 of them looked towards the direction of Luofu heaven and their scalp crawled. Luofu heaven has disappeared. That was right, Luofu heaven had vanished and only the dark space was left. The 3 of them looked at one another, and they could see the fear and unease. The abnormal star was orbiting in the outer space of Lufu heaven, and no one knew when this star would orbit once more to the sky above Lufu heaven. Qin Mu quickly took out calculations spirit weapons, and prepared to calculate the cycle of the stars. When he calculated when this abnormal star would reach Lufu heaven again, he was suddenly stunned. He raised his head to look towards the space, and the stars in the space were different from eternal peace. This also meant that what he learned from Tao sect was completely useless. He could rely only on observing the aspect of the celestial bodies moving along their course, to calculate the path of this abnormal star. However, it would take a year at least to calculate it out. Qin Mu's heart turned cold. How long is 1 year on this abnormal star? Is it a few months of eternal peace, or a few years, a few hundred years, or even a few thousand years? THG looked around and his eyes suddenly lighted up. He walked into the distance and said, "There are traces of battle there. It's best if we head there to take a look, maybe we can find a method to leave." Qin Mu and Zhehwali hurriedly followed up, and they indeed saw astonishing ruins of battle, and those were purely battles between gods. There were mountaintops that were shaved flat, and there were lakes that had the shape of palms. There were huge-sized corpses of devil gods that collapsed left and right. The flesh had already decomposed and only white bones were left. Far away, there was a huge shrine standing upright on a tall divine mountain. It was a dazzling sight, and seemed to not be damaged at all. Qin Mu was slightly stunned. He suddenly stopped in his footsteps, and rushed into the sky. Zhehwali and THG saw this situation, and they also hurriedly rushed into the sky as well to look around in alert. "What danger has Brother Qin discovered?" THG narrowed his eyes and asked. Qin Mu didn't reply, and he looked down around the terrains from above. His heart trembled slightly. The terrain of his abnormal star was very familiar. He couldn't help thinking of that hall in the canyon outside the parameter arc. The yellow sand that had flowed out from Founding Master's cauldron had transformed into numerous geographical maps. The terrain on this abnormal star was one of the geographical maps. There was the symbol of a shrine on the geographical map, so it should be the shrine on that divine mountain in front. Big Senior Brother has been here before. Could he be here? Qin Mu composed himself. Founding Master used the star sand in the cauldron to transform into numerous geographical maps, and the first map allowed Qin Mu to find Elder Qing Huang, who was hidden in great ruins, completely solving his problem with the writings of the dragon race. What would he find in this geographical map? I may have made an error. Qin Mu blushed with shame, and he said to the two of them, "I still thought there was some remnant of a god's divine art. It's fine, let us continue to head forward." THG and Zhehwali were skeptical, and THG gave a cough. "This place here is the abnormal star, no one will know what will happen. If Brother Qin discovered anything, it's best to be direct. Only by working together can we leave this place." Eh? THG looked at the divine mountain that was getting closer, and he was skeptical. Zhehwali's gaze flickered. "Has Brother Qi discovered anything? This mountain, do you find it familiar?" THG asked with a low voice. Zhehwali looked at this divine mountain, and his heart suddenly moved. He nodded his head. "It's very similar to that divine mountain in the celestial heavens, however, this mountain shouldn't be real." THG looked at Qin Mu, who was in front, and he revealed a smile. "Let's not tell him, grasp it and victory is assured." Qin Mu, THG and Zhehwali came to the front of this divine mountain. This divine mountain was solemn and serene, emanating off an extraordinary grace. Rays of golden sunlight washed off the surroundings of the divine mountain, and made them couldn't stop admiring the mountain. They didn't dare to just fly up. They chose to walk on foot. The stairs of this divine mountains reached straight up to the golden-roofed shrine. There must be a lot of bitter battles, that had happened here as the stone steps were all covered in splotches of blood. The blood had flowed down from the top, and it was very hard for the blood of God to dry up. Even after 10 to 20,000 years, they would still give off terrifying pulses, yet the God's blood and Devil's blood here have already lost their essence, transforming into patches of brown blood stains that were astonishing to see. What was strange was that there were no traces of battle here. Qin Mu executed carefree sword and slashed down on the divine mountain. Sparks flew in all directions, and his hands were numb from the vibration. Yet no mark was left behind. There seemed to be a kind of indescribable power flowing in the mountain, and protecting the divine mountain. Even the previous respectable king, and numerous devil gods from Lufu heaven also couldn't leave any marks down, after fighting their way here. What exactly is the origin of this mountain? Qin Mu was very puzzled. Zhihua and Qi took a look at each other. They both understood each other and didn't say a word. Zhihua's gaze flickered and he thought to himself. Even respectable king couldn't leave a mark before on this mountain. Is this mountain really fake? It doesn't seem like it. They continued forward and a corpse of a god appeared in front. There was no more flesh and blood. Qin Mu took quick steps and the clothes on this corpse had already decomposed. The blood and flesh had also rotted. The corpse had 3 neck bones, 3 skulls which faced 3 different directions. He had 6 arms and in each arm grabbed a divine weapon. A god that had died in battle. Qin Mu's eyes lighted up and he immediately grabbed towards one of the fierce tiger wine jars. But just as his palm touched this wine jar, the divine weapon suddenly turned into dust. Qin Mu was stunned. He saw that the skeleton that was holding onto the wine jar also continuously crumbling and soon, this entire skeleton shattered into powder. The other divine weapons also shattered into pieces, and couldn't be swept up even if he wanted to. Zhihua walked over and said puzzled, could they have been shattered by his opponent? Qi shook his head, and he suddenly sliced his fingertips, and dripped a drop of golden blood on the stone steps. His blood dried up quickly, as though the essence in his blood were all sucked up by these stone steps. Qi's expression became grim and he said solemnly, it was this divine mountain that had absorbed all his essence, even the essence in the divine weapons couldn't be preserved. Qin Mu said seriously, Brother Qi, we are now swept onto the abnormal star at the same time. If you know anything, why don't you share it with us? We might find a way to leave here. The wound on the tip of Qi's finger automatically healed and he shook his head to say with a smile, this is the first time I've come down to the lower bound. How would I know anything about this world? Brother Qin, stop joking. Qin Mu looked at the wound on his fingertip, and he was astonished. His wounds automatically healing and didn't need medicine to heal. Was it the effect of his technique, or was it the effect of his unique constitution? Zhihua was also astonished. In the battle in front of the god city in the painting, Qi's injury was the most severe. Qin Mu had beat him up heavily and he even got stabbed by Qin Mu, almost dying in the process. Yet in just these few days, Qi recovered back to normal and not only did his cultivation decrease, but it had also even surpassed what it was before. The 3 of them had their own intentions and they continued to head forward. On the stone steps were corpses of gods in all sizes. Some were from devil gods and some were gods. As long as the gods had 3 heads and 6 arms, their skeletons were nearly similar, so they were from the same race. This video will end here.